seat up front. That's great timing. There you go. All right. I'm Ethan Getaway. I teach in the history department. Father Bud Grant is in the theology department. We are the co-directors of the Academy for Studies of St. Ambrose on Lawn, which every year puts on two events. One is a colloquium, where you are today, and the other is a lecture, which we will have tonight. And that lecture will be presented by Father Alan Fitzgerald, who is joining us here for the colloquium today. It's going to be fantastic. You will just have a great day of Ambrose. I'm not building it up too high. The way the colloquium works, so this one is, the word just means we're having a conversation. And that's what we want to have here today. We've kind of set up an artificial one to start, but we hope that all of you will participate as we get going in this 30 to 45 minute session. What we'll do here in just a second is each of our panelists, we're so grateful to have here today, will introduce themselves, give a little bit about who they are, and you kind of hear what their backgrounds are here at Ambrose. After that, they'll each kind of talk a little bit about what they think of as radical hospitality. Now, they are not experts on Ambrose, so there's no pressure on them to be experts on Ambrose, but we have given them some readings to have them kind of think a little bit more about what Ambrose was saying. By the way, where did Ambrose live? Oh yeah, that was a dead silence. That's about right. So he died in 397. Okay, so 4th century, long time. But his words are still not just inspiring, but I think very relevant to our own contemporary times, which is why Father Bud and I do what we do, and why we bring this to you today. So they're thinking about those words and going to apply them to what they think of radical hospitality. We'll have a few questions. Bud, I know, has a series of questions to pepper them with afterwards to get their conversation going among each other. But then you guys are open, available to for comments, ask questions of panelists, of others, just throwing it out into the open air. We really hope that you all just join us, not just in presence, but in our discussion today. Okay? Thank you very much, and with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ben.
I guess to introduce myself, I'm Ben Woolley. This is my second year here at Ambrose. I'm graduating this spring, but I'm majoring in business management. But I did go to school at Illinois State for a few years, studying to be a history teacher, so I have a little bit of that in my background too.
Hi, buddy. My name is Amara Lionel. This is my 3rd year here at Ambrose. I am studying industrial and mechanical engineering.
I'm Pete Ant. I work here at St. Ambrose and Campus Ministry as the Service and Justice Coordinator. So I've been coordinating a program called Every Campus a Refuge, where we welcome a family on campus who just recently rescued as refugees.
Hi everybody, I'm Katie Van Blair, and my current role is Dean of Innovation, Adult and Graduate Studies here at St. Ambrose. I've been working here since 2001. I also was an undergraduate student here in the late 80s. So I have been connected to St. Ambrose University for my entire adult life, just so everyone knows. Although I'm not an Ambrose scholar, so I appreciate you coming to hear us all talk today. Do you want us to just talk?
Yeah.
Yeah, ready to go?
Yeah, just
okay.
Maybe what radical hospitality or hospitality means to you. Just kind of start off with that.
Okay. So I'll start. Is that cool? Okay. So we did get some questions and get some of St. Ambrose's readings to sort of think about what we were doing today. My field of practice is social work, and I was a director of the School of Social Work for a long time, and I teach family therapy. And so I've had a lot of experience in terms of welcoming students, welcoming client families, individuals, couples, and families that I've worked with for 30-some years. And also, Nikki and I were talking about the experience of hospitality of our colleagues and coworkers here at St. Ambrose. So I started reflecting on, I read all the readings that St. Ambrose's kind of little excerpts about hospitality, and I started reflecting on my experiences of hospitality when I was a freshman here as a student, and I had several schools that I was looking at. And I remember very clearly an admissions person here at St. Ambrose just, I don't know, I just felt super, super welcome and felt like I could be who I needed to be when I came here as a student. So all the way back in 1988, I think Ambrose was definitely serving hospitality for the students that they invited here. I also think part of the way I grew up understanding hospitality was through my family's business, which was a bowling alley. And so I think customer service was also what hospitality was. And then as I grew into understanding social work practice and hospitality for people through the Catholic Church that I grew up in, and also through my social work education, hospitality means knowing that you are me and I am you, that we are all together, we are all the same in lots of ways, and I noticed that through a lot of Ambrose's readings that I was looking at. I was pretty excited by some of the ways in which he talked about being open and valuing the experience and the perspective of the poor throughout some of what his writings were. I also think a little bit of a social work perspective on it was that sometimes it seemed like maybe he went a little bit far. It reminded me of the story of the giving tree. Does everybody remember that story when you were kids? And the little boy's talking to the tree, and first the tree gives like a leaf or something, and over time the tree gives everything until the tree's a stump, and then the older man sits on the tree and provides rest for them. Some of Ambrose's writings, I think, reminded me a little bit of giving until you're a stump. And so I guess I would like to infuse a little bit of the social work value of boundaries around giving and hospitality. I think that was where it was headed. There was a lot of talk about looking out for folks in a systematic way. And so it challenged me to think about, okay, what are the limits? Where are the boundaries? And when do we move into more of that justice part that I saw in some of his writings around he was talking about, I think, enslaved people and the ways in which he was advocating for their rights. And to me, that's the radical part of the hospitality that I saw through the writing. So it connected very much with my experience as an Ambrose student and as a professor in sort of the justice-oriented ways that we worked. So I'll stop there. I have plenty more to say, but I'll stop there and let Nikki share her.
Thanks for that, Katie. In focusing on radical hospitality, I too have kind of experienced, like Katie, of feeling radically welcomed here at St. Ambrose, sometimes as the outspoken person of faith who is also very social justice minded and concerned about justice issues in the world. Not everybody really wants to have those conversations. So coming here to St. Ambrose, I felt very welcome to be my whole self and express my thoughts and my faith, and that's been very valuable here. But also to the point of radical hospitality, I would say that radical hospitality is really welcoming someone in their whole self and their truth so that they don't really have to hide who they are, which does relate to a lot of justice issues. And then here on campus, and campus ministry really try to show radical hospitality to students and just keep an open door policy and welcome interruptions and be a listening ear and a sounding board for students with whatever that they're going through. And then also we try to be radically hospitable towards our community, because we're always funding service projects and trying to get involved with various nonprofit organizations to be welcoming of their good works and bring that to be part of our own life as well. And then with most recently the initiative to house a refugee family on campus through a program called Every Campus a Refuge. And I would say that tracing back to some of the things that I read in the St. Ambrose readings that we were given to prepare for this, it seemed that he notices a kind of a divine providence that when you extend yourself in extending mercy, then you're supported by that divine providence in doing so. And I would say that I see that happening here a lot. It was a little bit of a leap of faith even to make a proposal to house a family on campus, given the current, climate politically and also economically and things like that. However, the stars really aligned to, create an opportunity for us to welcome this family here on campus, and the amount of support people here at St. Ambrose who have come out of the woodworks to support this, as well as speaks to the essence of what it is to be an Ambrosian and the shared values that we have here of radical hospitality and things like that. So I'm sure I have a lot more to share as we go, but I think that that's a good original summary of my thoughts on radical hospitality and how it relates to St. Ambrose.
Great. Yeah, so I thought, like everyone else, hospitality is the idea of feeling welcome, feeling involved on that initial standpoint, but I wanted to kind of, because, radical hospitality has been a theme way before, our university introduced it to us. So I kind of did some minor research on kind of what other, maybe even denominations or other Catholic institutions had on the idea of radical hospitality. And something that I enjoyed that I found was it goes beyond a simple invitation. It goes from, do you want to be with us, to how can we be with you? So not in an intrusive way, but it's being creative, it's being, I think that's where it gets that radical part of it, is finding ways outside the box to extend yourself, to make sure that you are not only welcoming them, but you are open to whatever you need to receive from them, or whatever they're trying to give you, or you can give them. And I definitely like what Nikki had to say about the mercy. And so one of Ambrose's big pillars that he talks about is the mercy of God. It's never ending, it's always there, and I think people focus it on a very spiritual level, right? Like, oh, thank goodness we always have this mercy from God and everything like that, but I think it needs to be more applied communally with us, and often think, oh, like, I forgive you then, like, or whatever. And I think something like you probably did. And I think that it just needs to be more in the forefront of our mind always. And I think the radical part is really important, because I've been in Father Bud's class, and a lot of you are in Father Bud's class. And the main thing I took away from that is that what Jesus did in his time and what Ambrose studied about him, because Ambrose was a doctor above everything. He was a scholar, and he studied Jesus not only emotionally but intellectually. And it's the fact that Jesus never completed the norm. And I think that many times we get away with doing the normal right instead of figuring out new ways to do the right thing, which I think is a big part of the radical hospitality.
I mean, to kind of go off just like what she's kind of saying on radical hospitality, and just kind of keep it well. I mean, kind of from what I read and from the readings we had, the most radical thing that stood out to me was the story Ambrose tells on St. Lawrence, where it's the story of the slaves, where he melted down the treasures of the church and had them use that as that was the ransom to get these people freed. And he kind of says that the treasures that we just melted are nothing in the eyes of God and Jesus and that, but what really matters is our fellow man. And it's kind of radical that, the idea that we could give up our wealth to help our fellow man. But I think that's something we should kind of strive for, where it's we value things a lot more than our fellow man, and he's kind of saying that our treasures are they're physical, but humans only have one life. So it's kind of interesting that it's radical, that it's called radical. It's just interesting that I'm kind of lazy trying where I'm going with this. Yeah, it is just a very interesting story that it shouldn't be a hard perspective to understand, but I think a lot of us, we struggle to we all want to make money and we want to be rich in some way, but Ambrose kind of says that our wealth is everyone's wealth. He says that the rich get rich from, like, the poor, the people back in his time that would tend the fields, they're needed to feed the rich, and it's just a cycle. It's kind of this whole, his whole writings is like basically saying that it's a cycle, and it's kind of how nature works, where it's like there's this cycle of life, you know, the sun feeds the plants, and we eat from the plants, and circle of life, and you know, there's kind of a circle of wealth in our society that he kind of says that the rich need to give back, and they go to the poor, and I think that's a lot of line in what is in the Bible and what Jesus says. So, you guys.
Oh, yeah, so I was just like, I mean, yeah, kind of ending the story was just like, I was always about that. The ending story is probably one of the coolest parts is when someone asks a word on the treasure, the university melted and gave it to the poor. Instead of bringing back the melted treasure, he brought all the people with him. And he said, this is where all my treasure is. And so, yeah, what Ben was saying, you know, like, your artwork for the common man is, it shouldn't be radical, but these days it is.
And that's kind of what I was trying to get at when I was talking about the radical as like a societal level intervention. He was saying, no, it's not just about me giving to you. It's look at these people. Look how it changes society when we don't just value gold, we value the people. And I think a lot of what your office does on campus, that, you know, we talk about anti-racism and we talk about policy in some of our classes in order to advocate for groups of people. It is radical to create a just society beyond just doing service to one person. So it seemed like it was really infused through the readings that he wanted us to change the way in which the society is set up, not just the way we interact with each other.
And I also noticed that he brought this concept up of looking at the concept of treasure, because throughout his writings he talks a lot about people as being the treasure, and that's just something we probably can't meditate on enough because it's so instilled into us to always think of ourselves and think of how we can get what we need, what we want. And it is countercultural to really value a person and look them in the eye. And you know, that's what we are trying to do with our Campus of Refuge, is create opportunities for people who may have read a news article that's polarizing about what our laws should be about immigration and what's going on at the borders, but then when you actually like go and play checkers with a kid who would otherwise still be like 99% of the people who are forced to flee their homeland in a refugee camp, and you sit and see, oh, this is just like my little brother. I can't wait till we speak English so we can really have a conversation here. It's just a little bit different. You start to see the treasure that the people are and marvel at, oh my gosh, how do they still have so much joy after everything they've went through? I wonder what they did go through, et cetera. Just like creating opportunities to engage with people. It's such a simple level that, just like Ben was saying, it shouldn't be radical. This should just be what St. Ambrose, you know, says is that, you know, we just need to flip the table. We need to stop thinking about what the poor owe to us as far as, you know, their rent money or whatever, and what we owe to them in our, you know, state of abundance that we so often don't even appreciate.
I mean, you brought up like borders and immigrants and all that. And when I read this story on, well, the thing Ambrose wrote, another one of our readings where he compared a governor of Rome who, during a famine, kicked out all the people who weren't citizens of the city, and then another governor who kept them, and how in the long term, like, the city suffered when they kicked them out because their kids who were citizens were left behind and all that. And like, I couldn't help but draw parallels such a similar situation is happening on our border where it's like, and I'm thinking, what would Ambrose say about it? I think it's clear that like how we separate families and all that, it's like we are doing the opposite of what Ambrose would have wanted on paper.
Sure seems like it to me too.
Yeah.
I think that we also really try to foster that environment of let's talk about that in classes and let's have all kinds of opinions sort of represented, even though we know what a justice kind of orientation towards it would be. There's a huge range within that of what it looks like to people. So it's kind of interesting.
I think why Ambrose is so revered today is that he was able to take those conversations and influence people to do it. Because, they're there's so many conversations that I have in a day where, I mean, some are action worthy, some aren't, but not much gets done on my end or people that I talk to. And that's just, I mean, the time we're in and our human nature, but I think something that we can all learn from Ambrose and hopefully take with us is how influential he was. He was able to just make people do God's will. And it was very fortunate that he had such a just interpretation of what God wanted. And obviously, like, it was radical. Like, it was probably not delivered in the kindest of ways. Sometimes he really wanted people to understand what he was saying, what God was telling him to do. But I think that was probably the coolest thing about how he could get just thousands of people to do God's will. And that's something that hopefully more people can take now.
I think you're pausing for all of you guys.
You want to grab one of those prompt questions and run with it?
One of the questions is, do you feel challenged, supported, directed, chastised, motivated by these readings? Pick one. No, I mean, I think all of those things. I think also that's the experience of being Ambrosian, that you should be challenged. You should think, okay, is this congruent with the way that I look at my justice orientation to the world, to my students, to my colleagues? Am I doing, a question I ask myself a lot is, am I doing enough? Am I seeing things that others, maybe that aren't in a group that I identify with, maybe are struggling with? I've been known to send an email or two around those sorts of things, and I felt like Ambrose would have been emailing, would have been saying, hey, this isn't okay, or have you looked at this from this perspective, and how can we be just more, have a better empathy or a better connection with people's viewpoint that was different from ours. So would you?
Yeah, I was actually, that's the first thought I had when I looked at the questions, was that I feel all of those things. I feel challenged, supported, directed, chastised, and motivated, because even though I agree too with your social work guidelines that we need to practice personal boundaries, and we literally aren't God, we can't do all the things we may want to do. However, there's always more that I would want to do and give, etc. So I feel grateful for the things I can do and motivated to want to do more. But then I started thinking when Mara was talking, like, how do we do that? How can we do like St. Ambrose? How can we motivate thousands or hundreds of thousands or generations of people to do, the work that we're trying to do here at St. Ambrose? So
I think like an important thing for me anyway is like the openness to be challenged, or openness to see those perspectives, because it's so easy just to just get in your own way, not in your own way, but just be set in perspectives, whether it's how you were raised or how your friends have influenced you or your classes, and not that you have to all of a sudden just think something new and be influenced by someone else, but just having that openness, having that willingness to have a civil conversation. It doesn't mean you have to agree, but it does mean you have to respect at least where they're coming from. And I think that's first step in becoming an Ambrosian.
That's a great point too, Amara, because even the algorithm is making us disagree with ourselves, right? So we're not even exposed maybe to some of those other opinions, so we don't practice as much maybe as we could.
I think like learning about people and experiencing new things, just what Amara was saying, like I think that's the first step to trying to get to like this Ambrosian hospitality, and like I'm not really sure if it's really attainable, because from what I know of Ambrose himself, he didn't really meet this criteria all the time either, and so I think it's something to strive for. But I think the ultimate idea is like to think of ourselves as one big community, that we all owe each other stuff, and we need to help each other as a human race and as a planet.
That's a good analogy for how obtainable it is for us to be like Jesus. It's the same concept, I think. And so it's nice that in a way, like, yes, Ambrose is challenging us, but at the same time, he is relatable in that he couldn't obtain it, we can't, but it was the beauty of his efforts that we can try and
well into the next question of imagine what it would look like if his principles were actually implemented, or are they already, or is it even practical? Like, okay, so if all of a sudden it was like poof, and we tried to welcome the stranger, you know, just can you imagine how many problems that there would cause? Like if all of a sudden everyone was required to welcome a refugee coming to their home, or give all of your money, you can't have an bank account anymore, you've got people hungry in such and such developing nation. It would just be like this anarchy. Like how can we even begin collectively to get to a place where that would be sustainable or manageable given human nature?
Well, and yes, I agree that if every problem in the world we were trying to solve, but also from our little point in the world, I do think inclusive policies and practices create an environment where we can be more like that, where if we notice the areas in which we have a barrier for some people and try to change the policy and the way in which we welcome people, we really could do it. I don't know that we can solve every world problem, but I think we could provide, I mean, that's part of my job too, I guess, but we could provide more gateways to St. Ambrose for some students that don't have access, or people that don't know about how to apply for the FAFSA, provide education and environments where they can learn how to do it or have a helper to do it if they don't have parents that can help them. So there's all kinds of ways that more inclusive practices, I think, really at the university level, really create an environment that's a little bit more like that. And we're always working on it too. I agree that we're never going to exactly get there, but we're working on it.
Got a comment. So, from my understanding of what you guys have said so far, and Christian teachings, the basic goals, what we're shooting for is good stewardship. It will cover environmental, social, political, everything. Your basic goal is to teach here at Ambrose to be good stewards. Is that what I'm trying to express here? I mean, Ben and I have had discussions about this sort of thing since he was this tall.
Yeah.
So, it's a basic philosophy I've been trying to teach. I was a scout leader, and I tried to teach my kids that. If nothing radical, nothing crazy, nothing controversial. Just guys, our job here is to be good stewards on earth.
Yeah.
And this is what the basic teachings of Ambrose work, correct?
It seems like, I mean, the basic teachings of, I guess I'm talking about St. Ambrose University, as much as St.
But
Ambrose
again, you're
University.
an Ambrosian
Yeah.
facility.
Right.
Sounds like you're the only one, so therefore your mission is to teach stewardship.
Yeah, and to be good citizens. I mean, I think
That's all part of
Yeah.
being a good steward.
Right. I do think we work hard to help, and students can verify this or not, but we work hard to help students learn how to think, not exactly what to think, so that they're working on, okay, wait, we don't know every situation they're going to be in, and we're not even going to tell you exactly how you have to think about this one thing, but we're going to help you see the world in a way that you can figure out what you think.
So just boiling it down.
Yeah.
Bare essence.
Thanks.
And I would like to say that at least in this area, the Scouts troops are shrinking, even though that may be
It's
we're a
sad.
radical
It's sad
hospitality.
fact. Yeah.
Because it's one of the only activities for young kids that teaches these kind of Ambrosian values of the service and the faith, et cetera, all mixed together, and we're so athletic, and not that there's anything wrong with competition, but yet I think that's becoming countercultural.
It's coming
Yeah.
down too. Sorry to say that.
But yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to say it's about good citizenship, and then and the challenge coming is what does that look like in my life, in Ben's life? Because we live very different lives, and we experience different things, and experience different people, and so I think that's where, so you can go on and on about his physical teachings and read all of the books that he wrote and all that things, but then you have to feel like that, get back to his spirituality. Like he wasn't just he wasn't just a writer and a philosopher, he was also a bishop, who people came to for spiritual and emotional guidance as well. So I think that's where I think each person has a responsibility for that stewardship to figure out how that applies to them and how they can execute that best in their life as well. It's not just reading it and saying, oh, it's cool, but figure out how that applies to them and their experiences.
I mean, and thinking about the world Ambrose lived in, there was a lot. I think back then, we kind of lost this sense of there's a lot stronger sense, from my understanding, of early society and older societies. It's really recently that like people really like there was a sense that the rich and powerful owe to the poor, and I think very recently that's something that's been kind of lost in society. Like even then, like all the great like marvels that are in Rome and Italy and all that, like those were built almost as gifts to the community, and like I don't think there's as much of that anymore.
Yeah, and like kind of go back to the original prompt of like how it was back then. I think unfortunately it's kind of hard for me to imagine what it would be like if all of Ambrose teachings like went through and were executed, because they needed those teachings back then and we still do now. And so you're right, it has like shifted towards that, but like we need to make it. Yeah, but still, it's definitely those community aspects that is lessons.
I think, yeah, it's like, it's all about getting over individualism, I think, and like understanding that we're all a community, and like, yeah, it's something to strive for. I think, I forget which one you said earlier, but it's like, it is kind of in our nature. I don't know if it's human nature or just American culture or whatever, but like, I think like, yeah, it's something, there's something kind of inhibiting it towards us, but like we said, that there's no reason it should be radical. So, next prompt.
That's a good thought though, there's no reason it should be radical, except I think Mary, you kind of hit on something about we all have our own unique role to play, like I'll never be a bishop, that won't be my role. So it's like that discernment process of how we apply his teachings to our own unique situation and time and place and things like that, so it's a challenge to be sure.
For sure. And then another layer of challenge is to be critical of this is kind of radical, but the kind of capitalist systems that we have that really facilitate this. And really a lot of what it seemed like he was saying was stop valuing money and value your people. And the society is set up like this. So we will be in a constant state of challenging it in order to really kind of live those values.
And it's hard, because you know, like, no matter how any like economy, social justice system is set up, there's always going to be defaults, and there's going to be faults in that system, and it's definitely like good so far. Like those are such whatever that may be so ingrained, and it's probably not going to be changed in a day or by a person. So I think kind of just like we are where we are, what are we going to do about it? That kind of mentality too.
I think that's why it's important to have it was asked earlier, like how does the university kind of encapsulate these values? And I think this discussion here is just one way that the university does. It's like, you know, I think it's kind of almost a lost philosophy that like through the education and all that, like having these discussions, like spreading it, like saying why is this radical, like, and getting it just out there through education, like to say like, you know, have people realize like why can't we live more like this? You know, kind of implement a slow change.
Yeah, thinking about the term radical, just expanding a little bit about how our society challenges us to do radical hospitality, even just the nature of technology and how it's evolved to become where we all have our own handheld devices and we all have our AirPods. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with college students who say that they just kind of put their hoodie up, check out, don't make eye contact. You know, we'll have an experience like a service trip or a retreat where all the students are so connected with one another over that time. But then the gravity when you get back into like normal life, even here at St. Ambrose, it's a pretty countercultural, radically hospitable place. Modern life isn't very conducive to being radically hospitable, to even look up and say hi or take time to really listen to someone and things like that. So not to dwell on the challenges we face, but we face unique challenges because our technology too is something that St. Ambrose could have never dreamed of, that we can communicate these positive messages and stay connected in unique ways.
You know what you said, like we're the only university experiencing St. Ambrose, so we have this kind of weird, you know, like unspoken kind of pressure to make sure that we carry out what he is teaching tomorrow, and like, you know, like you guys talk about what you guys do every day. It's like it's the effort, to put his things into place, which is really
This is probably a good time for you guys to offer some comments or questions, if you want to get involved at the.
I have a question. What are the more like specific ways that St. Ambrose offers hospitality in a radical way? And a follow-up question to that is, if you guys think that we could be doing better, what does that look like?
I have a couple examples that come to, but my definition of radical was sort of a macro level, societal level hospitality, which means better policies and that sort of thing. And so we have many programs that teach how to do that, the exact steps that you go through in order to advocate for a just society, whether it's through government or through sort of a community level, structured community organizing sort of efforts. So I do think that there's actual professional skills that are taught in some majors, not necessarily across the whole university, but also in a lot of our co-curricular sorts of offerings. That sometimes it's hard to know all the different events that are happening on campus because there's so many, but there's really more discrete, smaller ways that people can advocate for that radical hospitality, which I think changes society. So I, of course, come out of social, and it's a whole field of practice to do that.
Yeah, I'm thinking more in terms of like the student activities, components of like diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that's radical hospitality that we have, affinity groups and student clubs and organizations, Latinos Weavers, Black Student Union, and then pretty much every interest a student could ever have where they can feel included within their own cultural, but that they're always inclusive to everyone. All the clubs and things on campus are inclusive to everyone, and campus ministry is inclusive to all religions, and the university is inclusive of LGBTQ, et cetera, and things like that. So I think that we have a lot in place that is intended to be inclusive and welcoming of all. Of course, we don't always live that out perfectly on a day-to-day basis, but yeah, there's a lot of efforts being made. And also like the accessibility resource center, for students with disabilities, that they can still get accommodations in classes and things like that. I think we really work to be inclusive and always can do more, but I can't think of specific ways in which we could do more right now.
I thought all the groups was good examples.
Okay.
It's kind of cool. I'm blessed to be in a really cool spot where most of my professors and content is not theological, but I still feel supported and educated and challenged in the same way that Ambrose would have challenged his people. Obviously, the content's not the same, but it's really cool that I have very non-theological professors, and I think they use the same themes and methods of his teachings, even though they might not be about mercy and justice. I still feel very supported and challenged, which is something that Ambrose would have done as well when he was trying to teach people. So, not that my whatever classes teach me that specifically, but in the way they are taught to me, I feel about hospitality, and I feel just like taken care of. And it's really cool how all the disciplines, whether theological or not, can have a weird sense of doing that, especially here. It's really cool to like go to university where if I have a question at 5 p.m. on a Thursday, I can text my professor and be like, hey, I don't get this. And I just, not that it's a welcoming sense, but it's just a feel good. It's just a comfort that they don't have to do. That is something that but it's like what I said before, like they found a unique way to offer that comfort to you. And so, could we be doing more? Always. It's never going to be perfect, but especially here and in non-spiritual ways, like I have felt supported and very challenged.
Katie,
Go ahead.
is it radical also because it's countercultural? And I'm thinking, well, you gave the example of the family that we're supporting, which a lot of people in this town of Denver, I'm sure, disagrees with. Nevertheless, it's it's a principle based on all sorts of things. I'm thinking of, in the past, we were supporting civil rights issues in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, when a lot of American society was not. We were supporting the anti-war movement. I mean, Quality University was not supporting, but students and faculty here were. Is there a countercultural aspect to radical?
I
think so. Yeah, I'm going to speak to that.
I mean, I was going to say, I think Jesus would have been considered radical. Like, who did he associate with? He associated with the sick and the prostitutes and all that. Like, it's not people that were viewed highly by society, but that's who his initial followers were. And those are the people that said, we'll get into heaven, not the rich. He says that the rich, it's like a camel going through the eye of a needle. So I think part of being Christian is almost being countercultural. But there's no reason it should be viewed as radical.
I just wanted to speak to that idea of St. Ambrose, of how rich our roots are in the social justice history here, tracing back to civil rights and beyond. Like, when we did get our approval to participate in Every Campus as a Refuge, we're the first university in the state of Iowa to get approved. It went so smoothly, it would almost like make your jaw drop, but Dr. Novak, has that theme of radical hospitality infused into her come to the table at her inauguration, and it just, well, when I went through and have been learning more from the founder of this program, she just had to stop me at one point and say, do you realize how heavy of a lift this is? She said, I want to understand more about your university, because this is a really, it seemed easy here, it seemed natural. People have been overall very supportive. I'm sure some have their opinions, and I've heard a few comments, but as far as how rich the culture of Ambrosian's values are here, it does trace back, all the way back into our history as a university. So we still face a lot of challenges, but it's really neat to hear that from the perspective of someone who works with universities that are just really pushing so hard to try to get anyone at the university to listen and realize why this would be important, why this would be valuable for students, why this would be something that we should do with our resources, and how naturally that did happen here.
And because it's countercultural, even more reason that we should do it.
Exactly.
Right. And yes, and the part that you made me think about, Father McDaniel, is that that liberal arts, that sort of critical thinking part of teaching people how to think, not what to think, is countercultural. It is so now when you see something that you don't think makes sense, or that there's a group that's being oppressed, or that you can do something kind of in the spirit of St. Ambrose, you have the ability to do that, even though maybe you don't exactly know why you took a certain course. It's infused throughout all the courses for you to look at a system, look at a problem, think about it differently, and it then can make you a little bit more countercultural. It can move society in a different direction because you've thought about it in a different way.
I think honoring those countercultural experiences and bringing forward in different ways, and not only, I think people, a lot of it is more love, but you can be for a lot of different areas of your life. It just means laughing. I couldn't before just without something that people need. And something that I get back to that I think is a great reminder is a quote by Dorothy Day. And it says, you can only love the person. Oh, how does it go? Shoot.
You can hang it up.
Yeah.
I remember what you said. Yeah. It's the person that you love the most, or it's like you only love God as much as the person that you hate the most.
Yes, it's you only love God as much as the person you love the least.
Oh yeah.
And so I strongly, whatever, just take a second and think about that. God only loves you as well. I can't remember. I put that again. But basically it's crazy how much time we take, not focusing on those countercultural experiences and skimming over those and not taking the time just to love people.
Yeah, and othering people versus being...
And it's all people, and it's crazy. And so I would just take some time, look up the actual quote. I was bad, but...
you gave homework, not me.
Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect time to tell you, we should probably end this course.
Okay, let's do one more question, we got one more question.
I was just gonna say, definitely, that's how I always sort of interpreted grad in that sort of quote, like, in unconditional love, like, almost like, you're supposed to live the life of loving, or like showing hospitality to anyone regardless of any sort of context, or sort of like, maybe preconceptions, and sort of like, how I guess one question to quickly ask is how should we go about maybe erasing some of those preconceptions we might like have naturally? Is that what we do as sort of biases or like speaking about certain people? How would you go about sort of approaching someone without trying to be having initial thoughts, I guess, about a person? It's possible.
I mean, there's something called implicit bias training, and that's a concrete thing, so you can learn that. For me, just kind of practically, when I'm meeting new people, I think not just from a social work perspective, but just from a humanity perspective, I really try hard to remember that I don't know what they're going through, I don't know who they are, I don't know their identity. Looking at people doesn't tell you much, right? So meet them where they're at, be who you are, and meet them where they're at. See where it goes.
I would just say, like, kind of acknowledge that, like, I might have this bias, but then be proud that you can be the first to turn it around.
I think it's as simple as treatment is the way you want to be treated. We're all human at the end of the day, and you gotta understand that we all have our backgrounds and our flaws and all that, so, yeah.
I would just add that, like, if someone triggers you to look, triggers us to look internally at, like, what about me is making me triggered by this person, instead of, like, thinking it's that, which is already your intent that you're setting by trying to be unconditionally loving, and just always look at everything as an opportunity to grow, and be more loving.
I'm sure we have many more good questions to ask, but maybe what we should do is adjourn to have some snacks, and you can ask the panel, in addition, talk with each other, and talk with us, but for now, maybe we give them some applause and then we go.